So, the first stage, I've placed a blog post underneath called Progressives and the Left, Exploiting Hardship, which is the very, very, very first time that I met. So I'm going to tell you about the very first time I met anybody who described themselves as the left, where that was the primary identifier. Because most of us, our identity is very complex, and like mine certainly is, you know, I consider it, and it's accumulation of who we are and who we see ourselves connected to and what we see ourselves connected to, and it's a complex process, and once something's part of your identity, you'll defend it irrationally forever and ever and ever until it ceases to be part of your identity. So this is a unique class of people because the thing that they use at the core of their identity to prevent their reflection is the word left. And they don't know that actually this doesn't exist. They don't know that this is largely a word that describes media cultures who have no, they don't understand that the word left does not place their identity above democracy. And because they identify so strongly as our representation, and they've been led to believe that this is normal, they defend that and reproduce that, which we've seen over the last 8 years. So the first time I met these people, I don't know how they had got hold of my name. I don't know how they knew who I was. But they invited, I got an email to say, would you be willing to come and speak at Oxford University about austerity and women? And I've put underneath this video. And when I got there, there's a boy called Adam Ramsey, who is the son of a laird, and he's not really qualified for anything, but because he's kind of Oxford, I don't know if he's Oxford or Edinburgh actually, but he's close friends with the circles within Oxford, that I met at Oxford University. And he's quite central to the Green Party at the minute, lecturing everybody on transphobia. There was James Butler, who is now at the Heart of Novara, Laurie Penny, and their social circle, including people like Heathcote Ruthen, and this is actually the Dossers wing, so they're friends with the children of like Pink Floyd members and diplomats, and these are really, but this is not the culture within Oxford University who do anything. This is like the culture of Doshers on the fringes. And I arrived to speak, and I was quite in awe of this place, because I had considered, like, there had been questions about whether or not, and I couldn't have done, because I don't think I'd have got the grades, really, which is hardly surprising, because I'm now from 15, but, there had been talk about whether or not I should be looking at Oxford and Cambridge when I was a teenager, and I'm very glad, after meeting these people, that I didn't. And so what they are is largely young people in a period of identity formation who are seeking media careers, and they are operating within a landscape that has emerged where the way that you exercise trade union power is you DOS at Oxford, and then even though you haven't done anything at university, you can still make enough networks so that you come out. Owen Jones truly believed that he was the voice of the poor and set his entire identity against the existence of the systems that I was discussing. And then they defended that. And I arrived, and it was the day of the CCHQ headquarters was taken over, and that was them. And I was impressed by this. Like, really, I didn't know. And what they were talking about was non-hierarchical organising. And I know quite a lot about organisational structure, and I was quite interested in this. And what they had decided was that they would impose themselves onto austerity, onto everything to do with austerity, and prevent anybody else from speaking. But because they used a bunch of hand symbols while they reproduced their social and class identity, that would be, them opposing austerity. And because they can't reflect on identity, and because it's actually quite dense with narcissists and a good couple of psychopaths, I've got to be honest, the culture around Laurie Penny, the reason that they've fallen so hard for the turf business is because there's quite a few psychopaths. They're really, really dangerous people. And the thing that defined them is, A, they had never lived in a world. They truly believe that they live in a pre-1945 world where democracy worked by them being the natural representation of people that they had never met. And eventually, I didn't realise that this culture of students, I thought they were well-meaning students. I've never met students who would believe that they were somebody's representation before, and I didn't register that quite as quickly as I should have done, because I just assumed they knew they were student activists, and that wasn't that important, and I didn't realise that that's what feeds our political system, that actually it's the systems and people that I'm talking about. You could work in the systems I'm talking about for 25 years. You could know more than anybody on the fucking planet, and you won't get past that barrier. And I realised that what I had assumed were mendacious media narratives were not mendacious media narratives about women and about welfare and about these systems. And this has been reinforced over and over with Twitter, and you can actually see this on Twitter. This isn't mendaciousness because they don't know that they're lying. Because what they're actually doing is projecting their identity on stuff and reproducing and then attacking things that make them remind them that their identity is false. So I had no idea with these people that this was the case. And certainly, initially I took them at face value when they said they wanted to oppose austerity. I didn't see any reason why that wouldn't occur. Because this, you know, I was talking about the rule of law being rolled back for the most vulnerable people in the country. And that's serious. That's not serious to these people at all. And at the time, Twitter had just started, and there were a lot of journalists and a lot of politicians following me, who I never saw out, by the way. I never saw out this culture. I was literally just dotting on Twitter while I was trying to keep a toddler amused and trying to figure out how to fucking deal with this stuff. And then the next experience that I had was I was invited to speak at an occupation in Manchester, some really lovely students, and in fact I still talk to a couple of them. And they had taken over a lecture theatre, and the majority were undergraduates, and they were kind of only 18, 19, 20. And they asked me to speak, and I came. And when I started to speak, there was a little caucus of boys. And the problem is, I know I keep saying boys, I know that's really insulting to people who are watching who might be 18, 20. You have to understand, my stepsons are 30. You know, I've been parenting. To me, these were very young people. They were younger than my stepchildren. And this small caucus of about 6 boys were SWP. And I realised they had taken over the occupation. And they spent, and I spoke, and I was only there as a single parent, genuinely in poverty. And they started attacking me for my lack of understanding of their left-wing identity. And the validity of whether I was allowed to speak about the rule of law being undermined, about system failure, which was going to develop into this really serious crisis, which we're going to get during Brexit. They truly believed. Someone had led these people to believe that that was their role. And what I realised was this culture had misunderstood, and they were playing out the tension between their function and their identity. So their function is to provide a protective seal, and the way that they do this effectively is by identifying as a movement for change. But actually they can't possibly be a movement for change because they're rooted firmly in class institutions which do not change. If you're a movement for change, you're not based at fucking Oxford University, really. Because that's not where change begins, because that's where resistance to change happens. And so what I hadn't realised initially were the links between these cultures. And so what I'm going to do over this playlist, largely through the prism of my own perception, so I'm not saying it's perfect, you know, my perception is limited by my identity like anybody else's. I'm as fallible, I reconstruct memories according to my own expectations, we all do that. That's actually normal, and it's probably worth knowing that everybody does that. So also my perspective is marginal, and it is limited by that. But that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go through. So this was the first stage of the anti-cuts movement, where they had just realised that austerity was an opportunity for them. And so that's the point at which I met them. And so initially, these were students presenting as we want to oppose austerity. Now, simultaneously, the Labour Party, where Ed Miliband was trying to figure out how to do this. And he thought what he would do is be a progressive champion. and be all things to all people. So a fake anti-cuts movement was set up. And the initial stages of that were net rooms, where I spoke, and there's a video underneath. And the immediate response to me speaking and saying what was in that video was that Ellie Mayer Hagen, David Wearing, Sonny Hundal, Jessica Asato placed a smear about me in the New Left project, saying that I was too thick to understand democracy, and started to unleash on online abuse. And so all of these people from Oxford University, from the Labour Party, had recruited me because of my vulnerability. And then abuse started the minute I fell outside the object they had in their head. And The Guardian did the same. The Guardian they thought they'd found a nice single parent who didn't have a structural analysis, who would provide poverty porn. And they invited me to write for them. And then they unleashed abuse too. And so what I'm going to describe in the next playlist is how those cultures came together to both utilise the political power generated by austerity and to provide a violent and abusive protective seal. Now I'm going to warn you, some of the things that I'm going to describe that they have done are quite shocking. But I'm doing these videos with no fear of defamation, because this is how these cultures have exploited inequality, demonstrated elite social pleasure of the power of labour, and now want to unleash fascism. You know, Corbynism is a very direct threat of fascism because these people are managing a false identity and because they behave this way. So this is the first video in the Corbyn playlist. It's limited because it's about my perspective, but it's about the crisis in a mediating class at the end of a cycle as a tribal stabilising function start to generate instability because they facilitate the rule of law being undermined. And it's the way that a class identity will assume a right to abuse people. Luckily, this is not sustainable and will be over quite soon. But I want these videos on record just in case those fuckers get no Downing Street.